set, Bill? Yep. All set? Great, thank you. Yep. So you got to bring that down a little bit. Your microphone? No, you want to put it back just a little. See how our distance here? Because when it's too close to us, it's also not good.
Okay.
So you're good. Okay. Welcome, everybody. It being Tuesday, May 9th, 5 p.m., we'll open up this evening's Ways and Means Committee meeting. And as we normally do, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask you to please remain standing for a moment of silence for all of those who serve in our armed forces, home and abroad, and for those who have provided the ultimate sacrifice for our liberties. Thank you. Please have a seat. Well, first up this evening, we have on golf, our golf enterprise. But before we take questions, I'd like to ask if Director Spellman, you will be facilitating on behalf of the Mayor's office this evening.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I just want to introduce Darren Brown, the Director of Golf
Excuse
Operations.
me, Chairman.
Yep, one moment, please.
I
just a piece of.
apologize.
So the first thing we need to do is take this motion.
Roll call, please.
Oh, my, geez, I'm ready to jump right into it. Thank you.
It's okay.
So roll call, please.
Certainly. Councilor Reynolds.
Here.
Councilor Flaherty is remote this evening. Therefore, all votes will have to be by roll call. She is here. Councilor Maglio. Here. All present. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no approval of minutes, nor do we have any old business. New business is the continuation of the Mayor's 23025 fiscal year 2024 operating budget, or take up any action relative thereto. So is there a motion to take off the table order 23025?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Councilor Flaherty, do we have a second to take off the table? Second.
Okay. Roll call, all in favor?
Councilor Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilor Flaherty, roll call. Aye. Councilor Maglio.
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, now we have taken care of our administrative business. And with that, the floor is yours, Director Spellman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we have before you the Golf Department, Golf Enterprise Fund, fiscal year 2024. And to present the budget is the Director of Golf Operations, Darren Brown, and Jim Arsenault, the Director.
Microphone, please, if you could just bring it a little closer. Thank you.
All right. We have before you tonight the Golf Enterprise Fund, and to present the budget, we have Darren Brown, the Director of Golf Operations, and Jim Arsenault, the DPW Director.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, so first up, Mr. Brown, any questions, any comments you'd like to open up with?
I would say that we're halfway through, or a little bit more, actually, two-thirds through our current fiscal year, and the golf course, everything is going great. We're very, very busy. It was a great start to the first half of the season, starting last July. We were in a partial drought, and which means we had very little rain days, and our rounds are way up, and functions and tournaments and simulator business over the winter were all record-setting for us. So we're on a good roll.
Outstanding. Glad to hear that. Investments have paid off in your operations and the changes that you've made. Okay, so first up, I'm going to ask Councilor Flaherty, who's on the phone, see how this works, with her questions.
Council Flaherty has already let me know she has no questions for golf.
Thank you very much. So, Councilor Maglio, any questions or comments?
I have some questions. So in your budget, I was wondering, and thank you for the explanation, by the way, and being able to match this together. What I'm a little confused about is the actual staffing of the golf course.
We have two sets of staffing. We have part-time in the maintenance, and then we have pro shop staff, which is our rangers and starters and inside clerks. So are you referring, we have significant increases in both due to minimum wage and the reality that minimum wage is no longer cutting it for us out on the golf course. So we've been forced to pay significantly more than we have in prior years. Not so much on the pro shop staff, but more so on the maintenance end. It's tough to get young men to dig ditches and weed whack and clear brush for $15 an hour. So I've had to increase that, and I've had to reflect that in the budget. It's not necessarily an increase in manpower. It's just having to pay the wages it takes to fill those positions.
So in the administration, is that where the pro shop staff are?
I'm sorry, are we down in the pro?
So I'm actually looking at the budget, but I can look at something else if you think there's something
Oh,
clear.
no, I'm looking at the budget. So you're talking the first program?
Yes, so in the golf course operating pay, it's appendix, I think it's.
Oh, you're
H.
talking just the administration, the administrative assistant is actually the position, I believe. Or administrative professional.
On page 1
Yes,
of appendix H,
yes.
it lists department head, assistant department administration, part-time employee. And those are all considered part of the administration of the golf course.
Oh, yes. All right, I thought, so that is a position that's the administrative professional position. So currently, it's a singular position. It's an ASME position I think you're talking about. Is that line account 511004?
Actually, I'm talking about all of them. I'm just curious, is that the pro shop staff that you're referring to?
Oh, no, ma'am, that's on a different page.
Okay.
That's farther along in
So
program
maybe
6.
that could be what we, if you would be willing to walk us through.
Yeah, absolutely.
The staffing there, and then the other section where the other staff are.
Okay, so we'll start with pro shop. The other staff part for maintenance is in program 1.
What page would that be?
Page 6, right?
Page 6, yes.
Page 6.
Under Golf Pro. So the title is called Professional Staff Expense is the line account.
Okay.
And that line account has increased, as I mentioned, significantly because those are minimum wage employees, so we had to do a minimum wage increase. And then we also had to do an across-the-board increase for the inside staff that collects the money. And then that covers all the starters, rangers, people answering the phone, people helping out with clinics. It's a large encompassing group of people. They're all part-timers. I'm going to say 2/3 of them are retirees, and the other third are college-aged individuals. During the summer is when we have, I think, probably have 30 people on staff at that point, because everybody's kind of working 19 hours a week, give or take, in those particular shifts. So we have quite an array of individuals that work there.
And so that's all the 519007 line item, all that professional level. And about how many are there?
I'm trying to envision the time cards in my head. I'm thinking it's probably at the peak of the season, 25 to 30 people.
Okay. So that's 25 to 30 part-timers.
Yeah, literally part-time. They're all, some work 10, 12 hours, some are 25 hours. As I had mentioned, about 2/3 are probably retirees, and the other third are college kids that we use to fill in during the summer, the busier times.
Okay. And then the golf pro, that's a position, that's the golf pro,
Yes,
right? Okay. So, and that's one person?
yes.
Okay. And then, I guess if we go, I don't think there's any more staff after that, but I think if we back
Be
through
back to the
it-
first page, administration.
Okay. So we'll go back to the first page, and that's where there are those 4 positions?
So, yes, there's the department head, which is myself. There's the assistant department head, which is my assistant, Rick Schneider, another management employee who helps me run the actual physical golf course itself. The next position is an ASME position. It's a clerical position that we currently split with the recreation department. We are exploring making it a full-time position we used to have back in the mid-2000s, looking at bringing that back to full-time. So we've added money into that, and we're going to have discussions with the department head and HR going forward. The next line after that is the golf course grounds seasonal employees, for the most part retirees and college kids at the peak of the season. Those are the ones that were used to be minimum wage. We're now paying, I should say, I'm bribing college kids to come for $16 to $17 an hour and get pretty dirty and occasional poison ivy. So that's really how that account is really what keeps the golf course going during the summer.
Okay. And about how many of those?
Probably maybe 8. It
Okay.
depends on how lucky I am this year getting some returnees.
Okay, great. And then there's also a labor line item.
I'm sorry.
There's also a labor line item?
Yes, so the labor is our ASME workforce, union workforce. We have 3 individuals. We have a W-7 and 2 W-3s.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, they're common positions within the ASME union, so they're full-time maintenance workers for the golf course.
Okay. And you said there's 3 to 4?
3.
3.
3, yeah, it's a constant.
Okay. Are there any other staff tucked in anywhere else in your budget?
So there's food and beverage staff, and that is in the food and beverage revolving fund, which we don't necessarily have a breakdown of that, but that tends to, the main position is the food and beverage manager, Justina Scalia, and then she has, similar to the rest of our operation, a mixture of retirees and college kids, similar, all minimum wage on her end.
Okay.
But probably she might have 7 or 8 at the peak of the season, and then through the winter, it's just herself, and if she's lucky to have 2 or 3 other young people to help her out.
Okay. And the food and beverage, that revolving fund, as you just mentioned, covers the costs of the food and beverage manager and those part-time retirees, et cetera.
100% of all food and beverage costs.
Excellent. And then the golf revolving fund covers 100% of all the other costs?
No, so the
Plus-
golf revolving fund covers the purchase and sale of merchandise, and also it covers lessons and clinics. So we would pay our instructors out of that. So the more registrations we have for clinics, the more money that goes into that fund, the more money we have to pay the instructors to cover the additional classes, depending on how popular the classes are.
Okay. So is there another fund that pays for all the rest of the staffing?
Nope, it's just the professionals. The first one that we addressed under the pro shop, that addresses all the other outside and inside pro shop employees, the rangers, the starters, and the clerks. The only employees that are paid out of the pro shop revolving fund are just the instructors that we do for the junior clinics and special needs clinics, and we have a very vibrant women's golf clinics. So there's only probably four people paid out of the Pro Shop revolving fund, and that's just the teachers.
Okay, let me ask in a different way then, because probably, so there's different revolving funds. There's the Pro Shop,
It's two.
there's the beverage,
Yes.
okay. So then, anything not covered by those revolving funds,
Yes,
does the rest of the money come from
yes.
greens fees and?
It comes from these two budgets, the two line accounts we covered. So the only labor, we have two revolving funds, the Pro Shop revolving fund and then the food and beverage revolving fund. So the food and beverage revolving fund covers all food and beverage employees, including the manager. The Pro Shop revolving fund, the only employees it covers is just the people that teach our juniors clinics, our special needs clinics, and our women's clinics. It just covers the instructors' hourly pay out of that, because we take the registrations from the clinics and then we pay out the salaries to the instructors out of that fund. And it was put into a revolving fund a few years ago just because sometimes the clinics become so popular, we were always coming back for more money to pay our teachers. So by having the revolving fund, the registration money goes into the revolving fund, and then we're able to pay the instructors' salaries or hourly wages out of that.
Okay,
But everything else, the regular maintenance staff and the regular Pro Shop workers and starters and rangers are all built into the golf maintenance budget that we just talked about, those two line accounts.
okay. So for people at home who are hearing this, what we're talking about is that the golf course functions separately from the town's general fund,
Yes.
and from whatever fund it comes from, it's self-sustaining and self-funding.
Yes.
Okay. That's really important, because what I'm hearing are, needs, right? Needs to keep things functioning, to keep equipment going, to keep the lawns up, to make sure people are fed, to make sure golfers who are coming in have a good experience.
Yes.
To make sure that staff are appropriately compensated, to make sure that that we're minding, our minimum wage, and we're looking at making it enticing for a 17-year-old to want to weed whack in the
Yep.
poison ivy. Like, there's costs to doing that.
Yes.
And so when we are smart about our budget and our planning, and when we're able to have enough revenue, we can have what sounds like a really healthy, functioning, recreational, fun atmosphere for people who like to golf, like the outdoors, like to visit the food and bar, the beverage area. And so I think that is, I think the fact that, that's what it takes to actually continue to have something functioning, is that you need to invest in the people that are there, you need to invest in the services, invest in the equipment, and then what you have is a quality opportunity. So that's what it sounds like to me, and I am glad to hear about the planning. I'm glad to hear about the self-sustaining nature of it, and I appreciate you kind of going through this information with me. It's really helpful. So
Great. It'd be
thank
great if you can come up sometime. We'd give you a tour.
I would love to. In fact, that was going to be one of my asks after I was going to run after you, because I've only driven by. I've never actually been there, so I would love to. Thank
Great.
you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Maglio. Okay, so some similar questions, just for my edification. So the administrative assistant, you had mentioned there was a part-time, it had been part-time for some time,
Yes.
last few years anyways, and
oh,
the
yeah.
plan is to make it a full-time position once more. And in this line item, it represents the, for the projected budget, $50,748. That represents what you would consider to be the full-time compensation?
Originally, Counselor, I was looking at doing a part-time position to help, and I think that might be something we're going to give a trial to. We did have a full-time position back in up until '08. That was an S6, and right now we've been sharing with the Recreation Department. So, as you may have heard, we've had some turnover in that department, and so we're trying to possibly look at bringing on a little bit of clerical to help us keep up.
Okay, so, and that represents, so last year's budget on this line item for 23, I should say current year, is 28,721,
Yeah.
and that represents what?
That represented half of the salary of the individual we share with the Recreation Department.
Okay,
And
so
so-
that represents just that one, or .5 resources
Correct.
for the year, and you're going to be going to one resource.
We're gonna-
How that's fashioned is still up in the air, whether it's two part-time or if
Yeah.
it's one full-time.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
As I said earlier, it's something that we wanted to put some extra funding in the budget and then kind of throw it down on some paper and talk about it with HR and Ed and Jim and kind of bat it around. But we wanted to have a little bit of funding in there to at least have the conversation.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate that, that's clear. The next line item was for, I'm not quite sure what this acronym stands for on page 1, GRPLIF/MED. It's a negative 11.4%, so that's a decrease.
Oh, that's Group Life Medical.
Okay.
We actually had an individual who got married and went on his wife's health insurance plan, and we only have 3 full-timers, so it really makes a huge difference in our healthcare.
Okay. 25% increase in data processing. So it's a $3,000 increase, and what does that reflect?
So I didn't budget for it prior, but we had to take on our own broadband service. Since Bell dropped broadband, I had to
Got it.
I had to sign a contract with Comcast, and
All right, understood.
that's what's covering it. All of our systems are cloud-based, so we had to buy a pretty decent speed to help our services.
Terrific. And everything else seems to be level funded as far in terms of building maintenance?
Yeah, we're hoping to maybe address some issues in the fall. Ed and I and Jim, we've talked about it. If the season continues, we'll probably come back maybe in the fall for a supplement to address maybe some of the larger issues of the building that need some attention. But right now, we're just gonna do what we can with the regular budget, and hopefully things will have another great season, and we can come back and take care of some gutters and a few other larger items that need to be addressed, because 2/3 of the building is built in 1986, and we've got some areas that need some attention.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And then just lastly, from line items question, I know that you have, well, actually, let me, this is not my last question, but I do want to go back to personnel again, but page 4 is the gasoline and diesel line items.
Yes.
It looks as if you have, you're over your, what was a $19,000 budget for gasoline and diesel at $8,000, so those I'm assuming attributed to the gas and fuel spikes throughout the year.
Yeah, significantly. We just had a brand-new fleet of golf carts delivered that are very fuel efficient, so we're hoping that we can get a reduction on that. But in all honesty, I probably should have added a couple bucks to that line account. I didn't, and so we'll address it. Probably have to address a later date.
The golf carts run on which?
They're on this group is on gas. We don't. The next lease will be electric. We have a lot of infrastructure to build between now and then.
Okay, so my next question, you had anticipated my follow-up question there is, electric, I know there's the performance of vehicles and the ability to be able to charge them and hold a charge.
Yeah.
Hence your comment on the infrastructure upgrade that would be needed to support that. Electricity being a very cheap commodity, comparatively speaking, here in Braintree, due to the advantage of BELD.
Yes.
So is that's factored in, I'm assuming, after the initial the investment of upfitting?
So for the next lease, which will be in 5 years, we're going to pursue electric vehicles, and so that gives me about 5 years to do a capital a capital plan to address our cart storage facility, because we would have to enlarge it to be able to enclose all the electrical chargers that you have to hang. And then each charger has a 20 amp breaker for each, and we have 60 golf carts at this point in time. So structurally, it's going to be probably close to a $100,000 project to build the storage facility for those carts, which I've made a commitment to looking into prior to the expiration of this current 5-year lease.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. That leads me to another question then. So your revenue earnings, from what, if I've read the data correctly, you're up quite a bit, 10.29%.
Fingers crossed, yes.
Revenue earnings is what you're projected to finish out the year. So you spoke about some, do you maintain a reserve fund? Or is it just all stated, it's all under that one enterprise fund heading?
Right now, I mean, Ed could better speak to this. It's just the money outside, the earnings above and beyond the budget stay in the golf course retained earnings account,
Okay.
which right now is, it's our rainy day fund, so to speak.
And what is that balance, roughly?
It's 260.
It's 200, excuse me, $246,000.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Very good. And just my last question for you was, so where are we? Is the administration line back on page 1? Where did I see it? I had the golf pro salary. Where is that? Thank you. Just had to go a few more pages here. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. All right. Current year revised budget is 130. The actuals, excuse me, you started out the year, you're going up of 15,000 on the golf pro salary for fiscal 24 over 23?
That is the golf professional staff account, I think, unless I'm getting confused.
Page 6,
Page
under,
6.
You're right, professional. Golf pro, those are the line above. Okay, so you are, essentially, it's 0.1% increase. So you've had a change in that position as well this year?
We have.
Okay. So you're not going to realize any savings out of that, or is it just you're going to be utilizing all what was originally allocated for that
There'll
line?
probably be some savings, I'm assuming, which, to be quite honest, since it's in the same program as the part-time staff, if we have a good year, we'll probably end up using any savings we can from that line account. But yeah, I have not adjusted the line account.
Okay. And this golf pro is a certified pro?
No.
Okay. Is there a plan for that?
Yes, he's actually in the program. So a young Braintree kid that won the state championships. The high school golf team was in the New England PGA internship program, and he's a local kid, done good. Really, really happy to have him.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. And just, I know that Councilor Flaherty had submitted some previous questions. I just want to go back to the gasoline and the fuel and diesel fuel again. So you're going to, where are we on that line item for what you're projecting for the coming year? So your level funding, from what you projected for 23, fiscal 23, the same amounts for fiscal 24? And the rationale, just if you could give us some insight.
The rationale is, I probably should put some more money in that account. I just really didn't pay attention to that one when I was doing the budget, so we're going to probably have to come back and add some funding to it, depending on the usage of our golf carts and depending on the usage of our mowers.
Okay.
I'm usually pretty detailed. That one, I have to admit, it slipped by me.
All right, no worries. So, okay, well, my hope would be is that the market pricing will work in your favor.
And I'm hoping the golf cart rentals work in our favor too, and we'll use them and we'll have lots of profits and we can come back and supplement that account.
That sounds good. And is there any debt on your books? I know that I'm trying to remember.
So I believe the simulators, we might have one more year to come off. Those have been just booming over the winter. And I think we have a new dump truck we've got a couple years ago. We've had the last two capital votes of 2022 and of 2023. The equipment we're not going to get for another year or two. So those were all, even though they were voted, nothing has been purchased.
Okay.
And we're just waiting.
So those bonds have not been issued?
No.
Good.
No.
Okay. And as far as the previous construction of the newer wing of the clubhouse, that's paid off?
That was actually paid in cash. We had a great year the year prior, and Mayor Sullivan had gathered the money together with Ed, and we were able to pay for that with in-house money.
That's a good story. Thank you. All right, that's all that I have in terms of questions. Is there anything further, any follow-up from any of the counselors at this point? Yes.
There are also 2 revolving accounts
Right,
tonight. Okay.
right. Got you there.
Thank you.
All right, I know that we have those revolving accounts, I believe, are under a separate motion? Okay.
They are, so we'll have to take that order 23027 off the table
Okay.
for the revolving. for
Will we
golf.
have to, what about the current motion for the budget?
That will stay right where it
Just
is. We
hold.
can go right back to it with the next department.
Terrific, thank you. That's what we'll do then. Okay. All right, so I take it we have no further questions on the operating budget? Thank you. Okay, that determined, and is there a motion for us to remove off the table? Motion 023027.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second from Council Flaherty.
All right,
And I
and a
will-
roll call, please.
Council Reynolds.
Aye.
Council Flaherty. Council Flaherty, roll call to take off the table 23027. Yes, thank you. And Council Megley.
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there we go. So, we've got that, and so what we will be covering here is the revolving accounts concerning golf. And do we have any questions from the counselors on the revolving fund? And we'll start with Councilor Flaherty.
There are no questions from Council Flaherty on the golf revolving.
Any questions from Councilor Maglio?
Just a point of clarification. The 2 funds we're talking about now, are those in 2 funds we were just talking about?
Yes, yeah. So the revolving fund just allows us to spend up to that amount, and with the increase in wages and the increase in food costs, we had to raise the level of what we could spend to.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. No questions.
All right, thank you. And just also for a point of clarification, under the food and beverages where we would find, similar to the way that you had described the golf pros, excuse me, the instructors, golf instructors, rangers,
Yes.
et cetera.
Yes.
Are they contract in nature?
Hourly employees, actually.
Hourly employees
Yeah,
and with benefits?
No, just hourly seasonal employees. We've been really fortunate to have attracted a female LPGA pro to run our women's clinics, which have been extremely popular, and then college kids and the pro shop staff run the junior clinics. But we just pay their wages separately out of that account based on revenue from registrations.
Great. And then just from the food and beverage perspective, the food and beverage manager is a full-time position,
Yes,
and that position...
it's a full-time management level M15 position.
Okay, and that is fully funded through the food and beverage?
Yes.
Revolving fund?
Yes.
And what is that salary?
And M15, I think she's a level D. I don't have it exactly. I'm going to say it's upper 80s right now, is
Okay.
what step she's at. I don't have that number in front of me.
Is that the only salaried position?
Yes. Everybody else is part-time seasonal labor.
Okay. All right. And the documentation for that would be found where? If the event that anyone from the council wanted to take a look at that, as well as the salaries or hourly rates of the pro shop funds.
We can, I'm sure HR or Ed can provide those numbers. They're all just hourly Schedule G employees with the exception of the management level employee in the food and beverage.
Great, thank you, we appreciate that. Okay, that is it for my questions. We have one more question from Council Maglio.
The food and beverage manager, is that full-time, is that full year?
Yes.
What kind of restaurant activities are there in the winter versus the summer, or versus the season?
So the restaurant is actually open more hours in the winter. With the simulator golf season, we're open, the simulators go up for use early December, and we take them down the first week of April, but we're open from 7:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. 7 days a week during the winter. So we only have one person behind the counter. It's slow, but it's very busy. The revenue they made this winter was very good. And she actually does small functions throughout the winter, too.
And anyone can go to, there's not a membership required?
No,
It's a
no,
public
we
course?
actually, we have the public come up. We have lots of public come up for a snack and a drink on the deck, and depending on the time of year.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Okay, is there an actual motion for us to read on this item, Clerk Semino?
There is not
Okay.
until the end of the budget.
Very good. When we have finished reviewing all revolving funds.
Correct.
It'll be on the final night.
Correct.
Got it, thank you. All right, you're good to go.
Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay,
We can table this at this moment if you'd like. just
yes, I'd like to do
get
that.
Okay.
So-
Move to table?
Order 23027. Counselor Reynolds?
Aye?
Oh, I apologize. Looking for a second. Trying to do things really quick and
Yeah.
get done, right? I need a second to table 23027, please. Second.
We have the motion, we have the seconded. Roll call, please.
Counselor Reynolds?
Aye?
Counselor Flaherty? Aye. Counselor Maglio?
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you very
Terrific.
much.
Thank you very much. So next up on our schedule, we have legal, and welcome. Solicitor, are you now the new solicitor?
Town solicitor, so,
Okay, when did that happen?
well, as you know, that Nicole has taken a new position, and I have accepted the town solicitor position from the mayor, so.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How long you been in the position?
I believe it began upon Nicole leaving,
Okay,
so.
Very good. I mean,
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that. It's,
Thank you.
you know,
And just for clarification, it's the town solicitor's position is not subject to council appointment, if that's, if you're
no, I
thinking
mean,
of that. I
I
just
had that sense that
Okay.
we do not have that.
So,
So it is not a chartered position, if you will, that requires that
yeah.
endorsement, if you will, from the full council. So, but it's nice to know. So we appreciate that. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so would you have any opening statements, any comments that you'd like to share with us before we get into questions?
Sure, absolutely. So, as you are likely aware from, your time in the council and your interactions with me, the town solicitor's department acts as legal counsel for all departments of the town as well as the town council. We represent the town in litigation. We represent the town in administrative hearings. We provide legal opinions upon request for matters, pending either before the council or before departments. I also provide substantive help with ordinances with the council. I also I attend many meetings as required, but the bulk of my work is in litigation and providing legal counsel to the town and the various town departments.
Great.
So,
Yep, thank you. Okay. So, first questions will be, I'll ask Councilor Flaherty if she has any questions or comments.
No law questions from Councilor Flaherty. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Maglio.
Hi, how are you?
good.
So I have a couple of questions just in terms of how the office has shifted. And I guess under the old model, where there was a combined position, chief of staff and solicitor. During that time, you were also here, you were the assistant solicitor.
Correct.
Was that a full-time or a part-time
It was
position?
a full-time position.
So we had the full-time combined position, but then we had just separate, specifically legal was the part-time. And then and I know that we had some other legal services at times for very specific cases. You've talked about it in, I can't put my hands on it right now, but you talked about it in your explanation. I had it right in front of me 2 seconds ago, but I'm constantly shuffling around here. Yes, thank you. So were there other people on staff that were not paid in terms of illegal services or outsourcing, but is there anyone else in-house?
No, at the moment, it's just me. So I have budgeted, though, to renew the assistant town solicitor position on there. That is budgeted. I'm started preliminary work on that with human resources, and we're hoping to have a hire probably around the end of the summer, so beginning of the fall.
So that would be that second one,
Yep.
the assistant solicitor.
Yes.
So that would be, and that's a part-time?
That would likely be a part-time position. It's possible that we might be able to do an entry-level full-time, but I need to do a little bit more market research on that. But it would likely be a part-time position, correct?
Okay. And so this amount that's here it would be half of that?
For the $50,000? No, the $50,000 is the money for the assistant
Is
town
the half of the
solicitor.
104?
No, I don't believe that's half of 104. So can I back up a little bit? I believe that you have a copy of then this will be helpful because I know it's confusing the way the positions have moved around, and I'm aware of that. If you look at the budget historical comparison, if you go back to prior year, fiscal year 3 actuals, that's from 2020. And you can see that was the last year prior where the town solicitor salary was included in legal. And then you see the assistant solicitor, and that's when the assistant solicitor was a part-time position. So we've kept the $50,000 kind of base salary for the assistant solicitor, keep thinking that it would likely be a part-time position again. And again, there may be some opportunity for that to be a full-time entry level, but I need to do a little bit more market research on that and see what's going to work best. So,
Okay. So the current year revenue budget for 104, then the
yes.
projection level is 50. Okay.
Right,
Okay.
for the next year, yep.
And so, and there we get to our 1.5 FTEs. Is there any other, there's no other staffing in that office?
Correct.
Okay. How often do you use outside sources?
I have outside counsel on 3 cases right now. One of those cases is actually, 2 of those cases are actually combined, so it works. So it's actually it's progressed as one case, even though there are actually 2 cases. And so we use those from time to time. Or I guess I should say now, because it's just me at the moment in the office, retain outside counsel for certain specific litigation, so.
Okay. That's all helpful. It's really
Yeah.
great. And so one last comment I want to make is
Sure.
some of the dues and memberships. And so all of these that are being asked for, that is maybe 2,200, I think, is what the
Yes.
total
Yep.
was. And those are things like registration for the MMA, professional associations, bar fees.
Yes.
How important are those to doing your job?
Extremely important. Without going to these conferences, I am unable to keep abreast in changes in the law. The 2 of the conferences that I've cited in there, the 3 conferences that are cited in there are all directly pertain to the types of law that I practice, the primary areas that I practice in, which is land use and environmental law, as well as employment law. And those are really the 2 biggies that I do here.
Yeah.
So,
Land use, environmental, and did you say employee?
employment, yeah.
Employment.
So,
Okay, excellent. Well, that was what I assumed, and this comes on the heels of last night, where we had a fairly lively discussion about the fact that in some departments, we are counting how many Xerox copies we make, because $25 on the budget is, is a savings, and not being able to potentially attend things like the MMA conference in the future. And for anyone listening, I mean, this is really important, to be able to have the tools and the information and the context and the professional connections and the sources of information and the free resources offered by the MMA in order to actually be able to have the tools necessary to do your job. And I think that every department should have these tools, and that we should see these kinds of line items being funded in every department in town rather than defunded. So I just wanted to hear you talk about the importance of that for us. Thank you very much.
You're
Those are
welcome.
all my questions.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilor Maglio. Okay. So I'm looking at, the reason, I asked for a reason when you started, Ms. Huff, as the solicitor. So if my recollection is correct,
I can give you an exact date. It was March 6th.
okay, I had
So-
March 1st. So that being the case, then you're actually drawing your salary as the solicitor
Correct.
presently.
That's correct.
Okay. I see here the solicitor line item is 0 balance actual for this year.
Yes.
So is there a reason why it's a 0 balance? How is the accounting of your salary as an assistant solicitor broken out in the fiscal year '23 between your salary as the primary solicitor?
I'm drawing from the mayor's budget, the mayor's office budget.
And is that represented in the mayor's office budget now?
I'm not privy to that information.
All right, may I
so-
ask the finance director on that question?
Yes.
Yes, her salary is split between the assistant town solicitor line item, and then also it's supplemented by the mayor's office, the staff line.
So, if I'm looking at the mayor's personnel budget, I have a salary, I have a budgeted amount of $327,174, excuse me, $327,174.88. You are, I thought that I had seen an earlier version that had the solicitor in both departments. And now I see it is listed as only as, the solicitor is listed in only the law line items tonight. But you're telling me that the solicitor's salary is actually being paid out of the mayor's office presently.
Part of the solicitor's salary is coming out of the mayor's office, basically.
Where's the other part coming from?
From the law department budget, the assistant solicitor line item.
So the solicitor is being paid out of the assistant line item as well as the solicitor line item.
She's being paid out of the solicitor line that wasn't funded, but there is funding in the assistant solicitor line, the second line of the budget. Does that?
All right,
Answer your
so
question?
I don't mean to, I don't want to belabor it, but I do want to understand because we had, you know, we had a level of, there's a level of complexity here because of the fact that the previous solicitor also acted as the chief of staff and director of operations. Traditionally, the chief of staff and director of operations falls under the mayor's administrative budget. Okay?
Correct.
Right. So when Ms. Taub had the three roles, solicitor, chief of staff, and director of operations, where was her salary paid from?
Her salary was paid out of the mayor's office, the administrative line item, the second one that you referenced.
Okay. All right. And then in law, we only had, as I see here in the law, that 2020, we had, was the last time previous to now, or in this case, upcoming fiscal '24, you had the dollar amount paid out of the mayor's office, excuse me, out of the law budget in fiscal 2020.
In fiscal 2020, yes.
Okay, and then partway through or halfway through the 2020 fiscal year, the solicitor also became the chief of staff and the director of operations.
Correct.
Okay, so I would have, based on the logic you've given me or the explanation you've given me, is that in the fiscal year 2020 budget, under law, we would have seen, let's see, law, what page number?
Page 16.
16, thank you. Okay. So we had $150,458 paid in 2020, which is, the description of that column is prior FY3 actuals. Was that the entire budget? Was that the entire salary for the solicitor in 2020?
That was the budgeted salary for the full-time solicitor, correct. On
Okay.
the line below it, there was a part-time solicitor in that
So are these
assistant
accurate?
solicitor line.
So are these accurate? $150,458.02 was paid out of the solicitor's funds in fiscal 2020 to pay the full salary of an individual who for only half the year was just singularly the solicitor, and then became the chief of staff and director of operations, halfway, the second half of fiscal 2020. Correct?
I can check on that. And,
All right, no, the reason I ask is that the accounting to me is important, because it's confusing for me to take a look now at the mayor's budget. I see administration, I see we have a singular solicitor. The solicitor is being paid out of the mayor's budget for the remainder of fiscal '23?
That's correct. Part of Nicole's budget is being used to pay the increase for the new town solicitor.
All right, and so presently, the assistant solicitor, there is no one drawing on that pay, on that line item, out of the law office presently.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
The way that I understand this, the way that it was explained to me, and it may be helpful because I'm not all in the technical weeds as much as Ed is here, but the way that it was explained to me is that I would continue to draw from the assistant solicitor's line for under the remainder of fiscal year '23, and then to account for the increase of my salary as town solicitor, it would come from what was left over from Nicole's salary
Okay,
in the mayor's office. So it would be combined together for my check.
So for the $104,651.20 that was allocated in this line item for the assistant solicitor for fiscal year '23, you are continuing to draw on that and will draw on it until the end of the fiscal year?
Till the end of the fiscal year, that's correct.
Correct, okay. So then, so that line item then is being reported correctly? Can you confirm that, Mr. Spellman?
She's being paid out of that line for,
So that will be zeroed out by the end of June,
correct.
completely paid out. So this is an accurate, page 16 is accurate. The solicitor line under law is paying nothing.
Correct, because at the beginning of, there was no budget for the solicitor for fiscal year '23
Okay.
because that was in the mayor's budget.
Okay.
So that's where the confusion is, and then going forward for fiscal year '24, it's going to be set the way that it is in actuality. So it will be back in the law budget. It should be much clearer going forward.
Okay.
If
And-
I could, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
just- If you took Nicole's salary and split it to chief of staff and solicitor, that we're paying part of the salary for the new solicitor out of that solicitor portion in the mayor's office, and we're paying the chief of staff out of
The remaining?
the other portion of Nicole's salary, correct?
Okay. Okay. And back to the law budget, so the assistant solicitor projected salary for fiscal '24 will be $50,000.
Correct.
And that will be a part-time position?
Yes, we believe that will likely be a part-time position.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate you bearing with me on that one. I was just trying to make sure that I fully could understand this. If I had to explain it to someone, I could explain it. I think I can explain it now on my own. Okay. And, well, we're not here to ask questions on the mayor, so that will be, we can wait on that. Personnel. And let me just double check that I asked all of my questions here. Okay, so the last is just a comment I have, and it's just as a follow-up. I know Councilor Maglio had talked about this. Obviously, that we had expressed a concern last evening about the ability of the council in situations that may hypothetically appear that the council would feel more comfortable in a case of any kind of a difference of opinion between the council and the mayor's office, that we could have our own independent counsel, legal counsel on that. And that's no reflection upon you in that office or the previous occupant in that office. And I know that there was a suggestion from the chief of staff last evening that there was monies that were available that could be availed by the council if there was ever a need or a want to have some kind of a second opinion, if you will, or a singular opinion independent of your office. And again, this is not, I hope you're not taking this as a personal affront to yourself. This is just, it's a policy thing that we have discussed amongst ourselves for a while. So what was the suggestion that, and I assume it came from you, and were you corresponding with the chief of staff on that, or?
Mr. Chair, this is the first that I've heard of this.
Oh, you are, okay.
So, but I would like to caution that, that the charter may limit your ability to do that.
Understood.
So you should, I would just recommend that you read through the charter. I believe
and I
it speaks to
understand
this
that.
specifically.
I understand that.
So-
This is something I had spoken to the president about the possibility we were reviewing the charter to allow for that possibility of the council. So, right, so thank you, and I appreciate you bringing that clarification up, because that is a driving force behind what it is that we can and cannot do as a structure of a government. But it just reflects, I think, the feeling of councilors, and it's been before this edition of the council, these questions have been asked in the past, prior to you working here. There is a bit of a history. So where we're now having a charter review opportunity, the discussion had been looked at again, and that's all it is. It's just a discussion point at this stage of the game. So again, thank you for your clarity on that. So thank you. But I just felt it was where we had that discussion. It was brought up again this evening. I felt that it was. I'd be interested to know who perhaps provided that, and I can ask the chief of staff. That the suggestion she had made to us last evening is that there were funds available in legal that we could, if we felt. But then the question was not interrogated beyond that, as far as what's the implication from a charter perspective.
So, yeah, I just would caution you that I'm not sure that that's necessarily allowed by the charter. The funds for outside counsel are for the way the outside I can just give you a little bit of information about how outside counsel works with the solicitor's office. Is that outside, and this is also set forth in the charter as well on how this works. That I am supervising the outside counsel who are working on the cases, and that I am in charge of basically selecting these outside counsel and managing and overseeing them to make sure that they're, that they're working under my direction under the specific litigation. So it's not. I'm not sure that the funds are necessarily available is kind of what I'm getting at, so.
Got it. No, that is very helpful, so, and I think that you've answered my questions, so I can proceed whatever I feel would be necessary to encourage a further conversation, so I appreciate that. But I'm going to recognize Council Maglo if she has another comment or question.
I do. And just to add a little bit of perspective to why that had come up is that it was under a different model than what we have now, and what I think what was designed in the charter in terms of going to having the solicitor position combined with the chief of staff and director of operations positions always left some lack of clarity as to which source of expertise information was coming from. And I think having a major step forward from my perspective is to split those roles and to be able to sit down and to know when you're talking to the solicitor versus when you're talking to the chief of staff.
Sure.
So I think that's part of my perspective on it. That's it.
Thank you. Appreciate
you.
your clarifications on that. Okay, so that is all. Do you have anything further for us?
You know, I
Asaf.
don't believe so. I think that this is, with the exception of the salary issue, I think that, you know, but this is a fairly small department, so most of the expenses are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, so.
Great. And in terms of, since you're here, we'll ask
Yes.
this question,
Yeah.
and I know that pending litigation, you cannot comment specifically
Right.
on. I'm very interested to find out what's happening with the long issue that we've had with Peterson Pool and the previous developer, Mr. Kokoris. Kokinos, excuse me,
yeah.
Kokinos. I'm not going to ask you any specifics about that, other than, do you have a projection? Is there any signs that this thing is coming to an agreement, or are we still have a way to go?
It's difficult to say. It's still presently in litigation, and I can't comment any further on that other than the fact that it is still in litigation.
And
so.
okay, and the defendant in that is the town of Braintree and the mayor?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, very good.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate your help on that, and you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Ms. Uff.
Mr.
We
Chair. Thank
appreciate
you.
your first experience here as a solicitor in front of the Ways and
Right.
Means Committee.
The budget, absolutely.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, very good. Now, next up, we have is finance. And Mr. Spellman, the man of the hour.
Mr. Chair.
So is there any opening statement you'd like to make?
I think I provided a summary just talking about the Finance Division. Just a quick overview, we have the same number of staff. We have a new deputy assessor who had started about 6 weeks ago. He replaced Bob Brinkman, who, as you may know, had passed away just after Christmas last year. And we've hired Paul Sullivan as our deputy assessor. He's got extensive municipal experience, a number of years in the city of Brockton and also in the town of Avon. He came highly recommended, and I believe he's going to do a great job for us there. And the rest of the staff in the finance division remains the same. I don't know if you'd like me to go through the,
So the counting, okay. Anything that you would like to offer up as a highlight before we're open?
under the administration program, there is a reserve line. As in past years, we had set aside some funds for that, but in addition, we've put aside in this line a salary reserve for the town unions that have not been negotiated and settled for fiscal '24. What will happen is when the contracts are settled with HR, we will prepare a transfer request to you to transfer money from this salary reserve to the individual lines for the individuals for the various unions.
And where is that salary reserve line?
It's on page 5. It's the last line. It's 578050.
Very good. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Please continue.
I think if you look at the accounting office, there's an increase in the cost of photocopier paper. The accounting department pays for the photocopy paper for the entire building, and we went up on that. Also, the photocopier rental, there was an additional one added to the numbers that, again, the accounting department pays for the copiers in the building. There are 2 in the lower level. There's one on this floor and one on the second floor. And a new smaller unit was added to the assessors department to replace one that
Okay,
outlived
thank
its
you.
life. Under IT, on the next page, on page 8, we have an increase in the consultant line. That's our Belt contract. And we have a multi-year contract. There's a $25,000 increase in that line for the year. The next line that has an increase of $5,000 is the Microsoft Office 365 suite that we provide the office to the town departments. And again, Beld handles that for us, but we pay for that out of this line. There's a 5% increase in the maintenance line. That represents the Munis contract, and there's a 5% increase in that budget. There's a decrease in the Connect CT line, but there's a corresponding increase in the website line. What I was trying to do this year is to go back. There was a specific website line that we had used in the past. I wanted to try to break out that cost from the Connect CTY line. And then the last line, other equipment, is a $10,000 increase. And what that represents is the town's PC purchase. We get a list provided by Beld of the oldest units that we have, and we try to replace every year several of the PCs throughout the town. And we start with the list from Beld and work with the oldest ones first. So that was the increase there from $10,000 to $20,000. The next program under the general insurance, there's a significant increase there. And again, in the note, there are basically, the reason for that, there are 3 increases. We had approximately a 10% increase in the premiums based on some of our past experience, including the issue we had at the school department at the high school with the water and the electrical panel. In addition, there were some older claims that will be falling off. In addition, for this fiscal year, we budgeted to add $86 million to the list of property for our New South Middle School. It's approximately $152,000. And also we had bear with me one second. The third increase had to do, we had requested a supplemental appropriation, if you recall, several months ago for an additional $26,000. That's been factored into this new budget for this year also.
Okay, so that's 26,000 above and beyond the 928 that you referenced in prior,
The original,
current
correct.
year, I should say.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
The treasurer collector, there's increases again for postage for mailing out the bills, the real estate, personal property, motor vehicle excise. There's an increased printing and cost for that. And in this year's budget, the last line, OPEB liability, we did not fund it for this year. So there's a decrease in that line of $377,500. The next 2 lines deal with the debt service, principal on debt and interest on debt. There are slight increases there. Lease payment is no change there. And then there's a slight increase in the principal on debt for the debt exclusion and a slight decrease in the interest on debt for the debt exclusion. As we pay off the bonds, the interest amount decreases and there's a corresponding increase to the principal amount, so that we tried to factor in to have level debt service for the life of the bond. And
We
that
actually had
was
a
it.
drop in the bond interest, even with with the interest rate, well, let's see, the yields, never mind.
The debt service, we have the actual debt service, and I've made projections for the new debt that we'll be issuing in June, and those numbers are what's presented in the budget here.
And they don't include any, well, obviously, interest can't be charged on a bond that's been approved but not yet issued.
What we've done in the past to not have problems with arbitrage is that the bonds are approved, the authorization is there on the books, and they're able to contract and spend money against that. We sit down with accounting and at the end of March, figure out what we've spent for that 9-month period and use that number to base our bond sale in the month of June on that, so that we're not borrowing the money up front, not spending it for an extended period of time, and we don't have any issues with arbitrage on that.
Okay, thank you. What is, just out of curiosity, the reflected, the 80% increase in the short-term bonds interest?
The East Middle School project, we've not had the final audit completed, and they've not made their final payment. They're withholding 5% of that. We had originally thought that the project would be done, completed, and by December, we would have had the final amounts. What we're going to borrow in June is slightly over $2 million in the short-term note to carry us over the end of the fiscal year. And then it's anticipated that in the fall, we will get the the final audit complete and get the final 5% that they're withholding from us for the East Middle School project.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the dollar amount isn't that great. It's, you know, relatively speaking, it's a low dollar amount for a municipality. Okay.
If there are any questions, or I'd be happy to answer anything.
Very good. I would just like, before I ask my fellow councilors or committee members if they have any questions, I want to give Mr. McCullough any opportunity, any comments, questions you may have at this point. Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Okay, so Councilor Flaherty has the first questions.
Councilor Flaherty, do you have any questions for finance? Just lost our connection. One minute. Try and get her back.
Did we lose her?
We did just lose her.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Councilor Maglio if she has any questions while you're trying to contact. Councilor Maglio.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. So one thing that I never knew is that the grant writing position is in finance. I always thought it was a position in the mayor's office. So that grant writer position is within your department. Is that correct?
Correct. She's under the finance umbrella, yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I appreciate is the list of some of the grants that she has, or the amounts that have been awarded, that whomever has worked on them as a team or as an individual. Is it possible to get the award date of when these grants were awarded, and when they will be used by, or either when we predict to start using them or when they have to be spent by? Just to get a sense of, because some of these, I think, might be previous fiscal years, some of them might be future fiscal years, and these are some big numbers. So it's just important to understand.
So you'd like the award date and then the beginning of the spending date?
Yeah, and where they're going to really hit in our budget.
And if there's an end date that it has to be spent by, depending on the
Yes.
specific items.
And none of these are included in our revenue projections, or they are once they're awarded?
Most of these deal with either capital projects or specific equipment, so they're not included in the
In
general
our
fund budget
operating.
or in the operating revenue, correct?
Okay, so this list does not include any grants that other departments have talked about, writing something specific for an event they're having or for a particular program they want to have. None of those are here, and neither source is part of our revenue projections for general operating.
All the ones listed are not part of the general operating budget, correct?
All of these, okay. All right, good. Well, just good that I'm clear. So then I guess my next question, and I want to thank you for the Excel spreadsheet. Again, it's really helpful to just be able to go in and play around with some of these numbers. However, I haven't had it really long enough to kind of go through and make my way through. It's a lot of work, and I know it was a lot of work for you to get it for us, so thank you. But what I'm wondering is, when we start looking at our full budget, and we're looking at the large amount that goes toward the schools, and then everything else that goes toward operating the town, is there in our revenue projections, is there a place that you can have me look that shows once we take out federal money, once we take out state money, once we take out local, other one-time kinds of public grant opportunities, state aid, all of those things, how much of the money that we're generating in town, locally, where that shows up? Is that, because I would imagine it's more than just our, well, let me just ask that.
Under the table of contents, right behind the index, there's a summary. It's a projected general fund revenue and budget summary.
Now, was that the one that was it was percentages and it was the pie chart?
No, there's in the blue book, on the
Okay.
second page behind the table of contents.
So,
Up at the top third of the page, you'll see property tax revenue for fiscal '24. You're starting
add
with
the
the
2.5.
prior year levy of 105 million. You add the 2.5%, 2.6 million.
okay,
The debt exclusion, 2,664,000. Projected new growth, 850. You get to a tax levy number. From that, we will subtract the reserve for abatements to get you down to 110,776,000 for property tax. The next grouping is basically state aid. And what we've done here is basically show the gross amount of the state aid, the $35,000. What we've done is we've reduced or offset the $90,297. As you recall the other night, this is for the library.
Yep.
That they get the funds into a separate library grant.
okay,
So it's presented to us in the gross number of the 28 million, we subtract that.
gotcha.
The next item we're subtracting is the state and county assessments that they charge us. And when the state pays us the money, they net those numbers together and pay us a net amount on a monthly basis. So that you see the 28 million is the gross, but with the offset of the assessments, the net amount is 22,990,000. The next component is the local receipts, and you'll see that behind tab C, or excuse me, appendix C. You'll see the breakdown of it, the largest category being motor vehicle excise. Then we have permits and fines, meals tax, hotel tax, payment in lieu of tax. That total the 20,882,000. And then the other financing sources, what those numbers represent. Going down the list, the golf fund, we charge them an indirect cost allocation for a portion of the operations of the town. There's a charge for, there's an overlay surplus number. There's a waterways fund for the harbor master budget. I think Councilor Flaherty had asked a question about the increase for that. And basically The Waterways Fund covers the operation of the Harbor Master Program that's now, I believe it's Program 10 in the Police Department budget. And there was an increase in this year's budget because of the new police boat that we're receiving in the form of a grant. There's increased operating costs for that operation.
Okay, that's really great. So to go back up to this 110 million.
Okay?
So the debt exclusion, that 2.6 million, that is specifically for South Middle School.
That covers the debt service for the debt exclusion amount.
Okay.
Most of it was south. There's a small component for school security, I want to
South.
say about $10,000, but the bulk of it is for the south, the
Okay.
new south.
So our numbers that we're looking at in terms of what we generate in town are the 105, the 2.6, the 2.5%,
Yes.
and then the 850,000. So it's about 100, so it's right there, that 110 million, less reserved for the abatement, right?
Correct. That's
Okay.
property taxes, yes. The next grouping is a net 22,990,000 is the net state aid.
And, okay, so this is the number here, 110 million, that gets combined with various state and federal and other funds that come in, pretty much. And that's what funds all of our different programs.
This whole column, the total revenue and other financing sources, the 160,405,000 down towards the bottom, those are the revenue sources for the general fund. The 110 million from the property tax, 22,990,000 from net state aid, 20 million from our local receipts that are detailed in Appendix C, and then our other financing sources, including the use of free cash.
Okay.
Now, in addition to this, there are other grants like the library grant. The school also has other grants that they receive funds for, either federal or state. They have their own reporting requirements, and we set them up in our accounting records in separate funds. We've got a group or a range of state funds, federal funds, and other funds. And we track those separately, and the different grants have different reporting requirements.
And are those grants part of what would be on that Excel spreadsheet, that's that workbook actually with all of those tabs that you sent?
The
No,
workbook that you have is just the general fund.
just this, okay.
And
Okay.
that does not have the school budget in it. I believe there's one line, we just carry a total for the school line, and the school, at a later date, will be populating the Munis detailed report for the school line item budgets. They've provided a summary in here for you, but it's not currently in the Munis system.
The school is not currently in the
The school
munis.
budget is not in Munis, correct. That's
Okay.
why what you see behind the school tabs
Yeah,
are either an Excel summary of the lines, and then also a detailed salary summary further back.
okay. All right, thank you very much. Sometimes I need to have that narrative a couple of times to just continue to build my sense of confidence on this. So let me just look at my list of where I put my little question marks. I think you might have answered them. I had circled the reserve fund for the contract for whatever union raises come in. And I guess one question is, how long has it been the practice that we use in Braintree to have all of the groups settle for some initial small amount while other groups are still negotiating, and then the other group, the groups that can then get a, what is it, the Me Too clause, that they get what, like the teachers, if the teachers negotiate successfully, those increases will then go around and also benefit other workers.
All of the town contracts expired June 30, 2022. So for fiscal '23, we had no contracts in place, and that's why we had set up the salary reserve in that line item. If all the contracts get signed and settled next year, when we go to budget fiscal '25, the departments will budget the contractual increases in their budgets, in their individual employee line items, and there won't be a need to bring or carry a salary reserve line forward. Generally, every 3 years, that's what happens. They start negotiating, and when we come to budget time, we don't have signed contracts, so we set funds aside in the operating budget for an estimate of what we believe they'll settle for going forward.
Right. So some unions are not current, some unions have settled, but yet there's others that are still negotiating. And if they negotiate for something higher than what the other unions have settled for, those other unions will also get a bump.
That's my understanding. Again, I have not read all of each contract, but I believe those clauses are in most of, I can't say if all of them.
And what is the name of that clause? I just called it Me Too because that's what I thought someone called it. But it's sort of a fairness clause, we'll call it for shorthand.
I can ask and get the specific name that HR uses, but
Okay. And is that something that comes out of, so that's not something that comes out of finance, that's something that comes out of HR?
HR is the one that works in negotiating the contracts.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm all set.
Thank you very much. Is Councilor Flaherty available for questions?
Councilor Flaherty has no questions for the Finance Division.
Thank you. Okay. So just on the grants. So I know in a lot of cases, the grant requirement is that in the case this, in our case, the town, pay a matching amount, correct? There are certain grants that we're required to match.
There are certain grants, say a certain a vehicle, the town provides X dollars and the grant would match that amount.
Right, and generally speaking, those grants, when it comes to anything that's in the operating budget, comes out of the operating budget expenses, correct?
Correct. I mean, generally, if it's equipment, in most cases, you'll see in the capital budget, we had certain grants where we put X dollars and they'd match it for a sidewalk, a snowplow, or something like that.
So that would be, in that particular case, the town would then have to match. It can come out of the general fund or it can come out of cash. That's just a choice.
Correct. If there were funds in the line item, or if a vehicle had been budgeted in the capital, it could be used there to match a vehicle. And if it wasn't, if there weren't in the budget, then yes, it would come from free cash.
Okay. So that money could, that amount of money could be something that we've already programmed into the budget, right? And you're spending out of that line item for the match.
Correct. Generally, the grants have reporting requirements, and the easiest way for us to handle that is to set up a separate fund for a specific grant. Say it was for a dump truck. We would have set up a revenue account for a state grant. We would have, it'd be other funds of the town if we transferred funds in for the capital project. So the total funds available would be the state grant, the town funds for a total, and then we would buy the truck out of that program or fund, and that reporting would be available to send to the state to say, this is the project, excuse me, and we received the funds, the town match, we spent the funds, and the reporting is in a separate
So
identifiable
the
fund.
reporting would reflect that special fund that you set up, correct? As your reference, right?
Yes.
For source funding. But the actual source funding potentially could come from a number of different places. To put in the originating match amount could come from a different account, that fund that is moved into the source funding, into that.
Correct. The town match could come from capital,
Right.
it could come from a grant, a gift.
Right.
From general fund or free cash or
So do
or
we
another source like CPA funds.
Great, okay, so I'm thinking about the spreadsheet that Councilor Maglio was referring to, that's had all of the various grants, right? Listing of all the grants from a revenue standpoint. Does that spreadsheet also include any, for those that apply, of course, the grants that apply, that required a matching dollar amount from the town? Is that reflected on that spreadsheet, or?
I don't think so.
Through the chair, I think the Excel report you were looking at was just a line item detail of the general fund budget. The other thing in my summary was under the grants, we've put together a table showing grants that we've received. Yes, there's 4 or 5 pages.
I have not seen that, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm curious, I think it would be helpful if we knew just a reflection of any of the grants that required a matching source from the town, that particular grant be notated that it required X amount of a matching source, and what was the originating source of that matching amount.
Yeah, that's why I said if we had the award date and what fiscal year it could be used for. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It's a good tool, and I appreciate it. It gives us really much more insight.
Is this the list that's on the website? I'm sorry.
Go right
Can I say-
ahead.
Is this the list that's on the website?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest, I haven't gone out to look.
Okay, no problem, no problem. I can check. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. As we walk through the line items here for finance, advertising from $250 to $1,500. What type of advertising has increased?
There's been an increase in the budget. The town's required to advertise the budget. In the past, it had been in the previous, in the Braintree Forum. It's now in the Patriot Ledger. There's a significant increase in price in that advertisement.
And is that a change that just happened this year? Reflecting the $250 previous advertisement in the current, in the current fiscal year, there was an allocation of $250 for advertising.
Correct.
Okay. And so, and that vehicle of advertising was the Braintree Forum?
In the past, correct.
In the past, okay. And so we went to the Patriot Ledger, or there was a decision made to change the forum, to
Well,
change?
The forum is gone, so that we had to go to the Patriot Ledger.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, all right, that explains that. We already talked about the reserves. We talked about consultants already. Let's see. You had made a comment on the munis that just a few moments ago about the school numbers are not reflected in munis. Can you clarify that point? Did I not catch the whole context of that conversation, or?
Within Munis, the general fund, we have a town general fund that reflects the budget for all of the town departments except for the schools. we maintain a line in the munis budget, you'll see it'll say it's a school, it's a total for the school fund that's applicable. There's a separate fund in munis for the school department. They have a separate reporting and separate chart of accounts different from the towns. So when the munis and we did the chart of accounts, we worked with CLA, we set up 2 separate funds because the schools have a separate reporting requirement to the state DESE, and the town has a reporting requirement.
You've actually answered my
the
question, just
Department of
I could
Revenue.
save you some breath there.
Okay.
I had to understand the context of the comment. I clearly understand the context of the comment now because we know that actually the largest user of munis, I think, is the school department. So thank you, you've clarified that for
Okay.
me. It was just, as I said, I caught the very end of the comment and I didn't quite get it, so thanks for clarifying it, and filling me in. Okay. And then lastly, there is the other equipment, and I know there is the PC upgrade. There's a rotating, if you will, you're updating through our, this is above and beyond, this dollar amount of $20,000 is above and beyond the service contract that we enter into with Belt.
Correct. This is to actually purchase the PCs to replace our older models that are out there.
Okay, so we presently have, we had $10,000 allocated in the current fiscal year. To date, we've only spent $314.93.
Correct. Generally, what happens at the end, toward the end of the fiscal year, we would make the purchase. If there were any other available funds in the program, we could use those to purchase an additional PC or something within it.
So you anticipate spending the entire $10,000 allocated this year?
By the end of the year, yes.
By the end of the year?
That's generally when we make the purchases. And
Okay, and so there were no upgrades in 20, there were no upgrades in 21, and then 2,100 spent in 22. That's what I'm looking at here from a number, so. I guess it's just giving me a sense of perhaps that cycle. It could be, was there another big spend that we're not seeing from 19, 18,
no, we've not
17?
had any large.
Okay, thank you. All right, and again, when we're doubling that cost, we anticipate in spending the $10,000, and then we are doubling that. And is that $20,000 reflective of increased expenses or an increased number of PCs, et cetera, that will be purchased above and beyond this year?
Yes, to both. I believe there's an increase in the cost of the PCs, but we'd also try to purchase additional ones.
Okay, okay. Very good. Insurance, we were fine on that. And then, okay, no funding this year of OPEB.
No.
Okay. I mean, 2020, no spending in 21, no spending in 22, and then the last 2 years, roughly, well, 377,500. And I know that, you know, other personnel, public employee benefits, OPEB.
OPEB is other post-employment benefits.
Post-employment.
Primarily, it's health insurance, but it also includes a small component for retiree health care, so.
Right, and I just want to be clear, this is not reflective, just for the purpose of anyone listening, this does not reflect on our liability for a retirement fund. It's a separate item.
This is separate. This is a
Right.
health insurance component that
Right,
we're obligated for our retired employees.
right. Great. And would that be reflected here in the schedule of what we paid in to, out of the general, we pay out of the general fund that liability of benefits, excuse me, retirement?
Within the HR budget, there's a group health insurance line item, and that line item is budgeted to include the cost of the employer match for our active employees, our active teachers, and then also our retired town employees, the employer match.
Right.
When a teacher retires, they come off of the town's active plan and they're shifted over to the state group insurance commission. With teachers' retirement, they pay the pension for the teachers. They also handle the health insurance for the retired teachers. And you'll note in the list of our assessments, the largest being retired teacher health care, there's a line item that we pay to the group insurance commission for our employer match for retired teachers to the state.
Right, so and generally speaking, or I should really specifically, we're paying above and beyond what our required or accumulated required amount is in the given year. That's based on the number of employees we have in the system, or a number of personnel, active and retired, that are in the system, correct? We're paying that, and then there's the liability balance that we're paying out as well, that we're looking to pay it fully off by 2033, I think.
The 2033 date is for the pension liability.
Right.
We have a funding plan for the town's retirement system to be fully funded by 2033. The plan would be, once that happens, that pension cost is going to drop significantly. And we
Right.
can take the savings and start plowing that, putting that into our OPEB fund
And
to get our retired.
And I'm sorry if I may have confused the matter when, I know we were talking about OPEB, and I think your response was that those, to me, that you referred to the HR insurance line. That was for OPEB, correct? Your response, that didn't have to do with my question on the pension. Was that correct?
When you mentioned 2033, that's the funding date for the pension system.
Correct.
And in the HR budget, there's a line for health insurance, but also there's a pension line for the town's share of the annual pension appropriation. In addition to the town's share, you'll note in the enterprise funds, the water, sewer, the stormwater, the golf.
They all contribute.
They all make a contribution based on the payroll. In addition, there's a small component for the housing authority also.
For the housing authority?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you happen to know if we are paying above and beyond our accrued amount for the year towards, I'm sorry, speaking of the pension liability, are we paying a balance, are we paying an amount in fiscal '24 towards that debt in our pension?
We have a funding schedule, and it's updated every 2 years. It's reviewed and approved by PERAC, and we're paying based on that funding schedule.
The
There's a
actuaries need to be run and all of that.
An actuarial evaluation is done every 2 years. 1/1/24 will be the next one. The last one was 1/1/22.
And we paid,
We're paying based on that amount. There's a
So-
total appropriation, and it's broken out by the component units.
okay. And in 2022, are you aware that we pay above and beyond what we accrued in that 2-year period? Meaning, did we pay above and beyond that amount, and that amount that was above and beyond represented a payment toward our liability?
A part of the pension appropriation is covering the normal cost and then also the past service cost, but the
They're all
amount,
factored in together.
that number's factored in together, and that number in the valuation is the number that we're paying.
Great.
Other communities may make an additional payment for whatever reason, but we have not.
Got it. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for bearing with me on that.
Sure.
Okay. That is it for me at this point. I think looking at the bond and the debt, I think my questions have been answered. One question, actually, lease. What is it right now? We're paying $56,000, almost $57,000 in a lease. Is that equipment, or is that a physical building, or what is that?
We're leasing 2 modular classrooms at the schools.
So the town is picking that up, not the school budget.
When I came, it was within the school budget and finance, and it's stayed there. And it is reported on the school's end-of-the-year report as a school expense, but it's within the finance program. And I think it was grouped together in the accounting with the principal on debt, interest on debt, leases that kind of fell within the category of debt service.
So that all represents, the $56,640 represents the modular classrooms only.
The annual lease payment for 2 modular classrooms, yes.
Got it. Okay, and those modular classrooms are located where?
They were at South and they were taken down, and my understanding is they're over at Flaherty, and at some point they'll be attached, or not sure of the term, but
Utilized.
they'll pour the foundation, place them there, and connect it all up for classroom space there.
All right, so they're currently not being used, because I know what you speak of. I've seen them in my walks around the plaza. Okay. Okay. All right. So are there any, at this point, reserved for capital projects, so that's zero balances, and let's see. Principal. Mr. Spellman, that's all I have for right now on finance budget.
All right, thank you.
And I want to ask Mr. McCullough anything that you have? Thank you. Okay. And I would like to just give one more opportunity to the committee members if there is any additional questions or comments.
I am all set. Thank you.
Okay.
And just to note, Council Flaherty left the meeting about 5 minutes ago.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Thank you. From an administrative standpoint, that's good to know. All right. All right. So at this point, we have no other business scheduled. And with that, is there a motion to table order? We've already, just to be clear, we've already tabled 027.
Correct.
Okay, the only open item we have right now is to retable, if you will, is the motion to table order 23025 to our next Ways and Means meeting on May 10th, 2023.
So moved.
I will step down as chair and second that motion. Clerk Semino, if you could take a roll call, please.
So we no longer have a remote participant, so you are allowed to just
I am
say
now
all
allowed,
in
okay.
favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. So do we have let's see, do we have a motion for adjournment?
We don't need to do the CPA, that's been removed, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna hold off on
I make a motion to adjourn.
I will step down as chair and second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank
folks.
you.
Appreciate your time.